Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt Orozco here from Macabre Daily, and I am joined by the lovely Felicia Day, who is someone who I don't really think needs an introduction to most folks watching this, but I'm going to give you one anyway. She plays Delilah in the upcoming film Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox, which is next to it's like the tongue twister of seashells by the seashore. But Felicia is an actor, producer, and writer who you've probably seen in many of her projects, including The Guild, Eureka, as well as appearing in shows like Supernatural. So, Felicia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. And my dog's back here too, so I apologize.
Oh, don't at all. Usually my cat comes in and sits right about there so that everyone can
Okay.
see her, clean herself.
That's
So,
even better, especially
yeah,
with her butt. The cat buttholes are the cutest things ever. So if
they
she can
really are,
show that
especially
one
when
off.
they throw that leg up,
Oh yeah.
like, yeah, I've never seen anything like it unless we're in the liquid competition. So, Uh, Felicia, first question for you is, you're involved with so many projects out there, and I'm really curious to know how you got introduced to Simon, and got involved as an executive producer, but also taking on the role of Delilah for the film.
Yeah, I was so excited when I got the script that Stimson wrote and directed. He, I guess, was a fan of my work when I first started doing web series. He did his own web series, and that's how he kind of like started creating stuff, which is such a big compliment. And he approached me with the script, and I have to say, I read it and I was like, this is incredible because it's tongue twister and a mind twister, but also funny. And the character I play, Delilah, is just so edgy and sort of maybe not as likable as the characters I usually play, which was a really fun challenge. And the plot doesn't go the way that you think it is. I mean, honestly, it's like your brain gets a workout in the very best way, this movie. And with Sam, the lead character who plays Tim Travers, he plays so many different versions of himself. It is like so brilliant. It's a masterclass in acting. And so not only was I excited to sign on, but the end result is better than I could ever have imagined.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing a little bit about how great your colleagues are here. But also, I realized I said Simon instead of Stimson, so that's my bad. I apologize, Stimson. I'm
That's
gonna
okay. I subtly was like, well, I can't call him Simon, but listen, Stimson is not I call him Stimpy, and he doesn't like it. So we could just call him Stimpy for the
Yeah,
interview.
well, we'll meet in the middle on somewhere. We'll just meet on Stimpy. But
Yeah, just Stimpy.
when I speak with him on Thursday, I'll make sure to mention that I totally messed his
Mhm.
name up so he can put me through the ringer, and
Good.
I'll remember that moment for years to come in the middle of the night when I shouldn't be thinking about it. But
It's okay. You
um,
could have just ADR'd Stimson over your interview. You know that's possible.
oh,
And
you're
then we
giving
could
me
have
too
just
much
like,
credit as an editor.
okay, great.
But I agree with you that I kind of found myself thinking a lot of the times like, is there a plot hole here that I can try and expose? And then I was like, well, this script is definitely smarter than me, and I venture to guess a lot of people that will watch the movie. So I think it is one that makes you think, but also makes you smile. And it also was impressive how much is done with very little. It's such a really big
Mhm.
concept. This idea of having multiple versions of Tim Travers, which becomes his multiplicity moment,
Mhm.
but especially working with under the confines of an independent budget. When, from your perspective as both the executive producer and, starring in the film, were there any concessions that, you had to make or decisions around things that had to compromise the vision at all?
I mean, as you said, and I don't want to give anything away, but there are multitudes of Tims in this movie. And just shooting more than one version of the single actor is so incredibly hard. And the fact that they pulled it off, again, on the low budget, and that the graphics and the CGI look so great is a huge testament to the post team. I think the editor has done one of the hardest but also best jobs I've ever seen editing this movie because it's just a huge challenge. Again, when you have somebody playing six, seven versions of themselves, that's the same actor, and you have to shoot that ever over and over. So this movie is like self-aware enough that you can kind of imagine making the film as you watch it, which is actually more fun for the audience. It's a movie that I believe was created out of spite in pointing out flaws in other time travel movies. That's what Stimson told me. And so you, as an audience member, like you said, feel free to point out flaws in this movie. I think that's part of the fun of it. But, again, they're not, he really did an airtight job of sort of sealing up what you can about time travel. And that's kind of the fun, nerdy, sort of well, actually, kind of vibe that I love about the movie.
No, I mean, even I would imagine to some extent that Tim is kind of doing that the whole time in the movie, is that his characters
Mhm.
essentially is trying to make this point like, I've thought about this problem longer than most of you have, and I've come to a conclusion that only someone who's so mired in this could have, which is that I found the ways to poke all the holes so that this thing is, there's no leaks on this time travel
Yeah.
story.
Listen, somebody's going to leak. Some person is going to go to in person to the theater or watch it on VOD and be like, actually, and then Stimson will be like, good job. I don't
Well,
think anybody will get mad at you because, again, the great thing about art is when you see something else and you're like, hey, I don't think that that's right. I have a different version of it. I need to sell it. That's what this is. That's what a lot of the things I've done in my career are based on. And that's where great personal art comes from, almost like
yeah.
spite in a way. Get
It
spiteful.
is. What did they say? It's, necessity is the mother of invention or something like that, and
Absolutely. And that's why I think when you watch a movie like this, it's a sci-fi low budget film, to see what they had to work with, the sets and everything, like they look so much more expensive on screen than they were in person. And I think that's just a testament to the crew and the vision. And yeah, it's a great movie. I would be a fan of it if I weren't in it.
well, I mean, I definitely was caught off guard by how fu endearing it is, like, and how funny it is.
Mhm.
Because, again, it's so hard to make genuine laughs, I think, these days, especially I'm about to be 40, so like I think I've reached that point where like things are less funny or the things that maybe shouldn't be funny are funnier than so I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe I'm losing my grip, but I found myself just kind of chuckling along quite a bit with this, not just how Tim interacts with himself, but also how others interact with him.
Yeah.
And
There has a little bit of zaniness in the comedy, but that's like the fun part. Like we're all just having fun. And, especially sci-fi has gotten so ponderous in a way.
yeah.
Like everything costs $9 million an episode and everyone's so serious and they're like, I don't know, man. I just want to have some fun when I watch a movie. I want to just be in there, eat some popcorn, laugh, and hear some F-bombs dropped, get some genre goodness in my eye holes, and then get out. And this is exactly what this movie is.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the assignment, it delivered in spades on that front. And given that this is a kind of a lower budget film, and again, doesn't look it at all.
Mhm.
I'm curious a little bit more about the shooting schedule. And was there anything that happened on set, snafus with trying to get these multiple takes or anything that was of note?
Well, I will say, I mean, very fast shooting, but Stimson is such a actor friendly director that if you were like, I really need another take, and in fact, there was one time when I'm used to shooting TV, so it's like you don't get a lot of like creative freedom to be like, let's do it this way, and that's it. No, you get in, you get out, and you're done. You don't experiment. And so one time I was doing a scene with Sam, and he wasn't in the place that he was supposed to. And I literally moved him. I was like, what did I just do? I just took an artistic impulse and then Stephen was like, hey, that was really cool. And I was like, I did it as an actor. Like, we're supposed to go, go, go. And he's like, no, 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 feel your way through. So it was actually a really good lesson for me and getting back to, again, the artistic freedom of being an actor. And that's what happened on this set. I could never, I'm really grateful because again, the TV is so fast. You don't have the time to be like I want to do it this way and that way. No, it's get through it. And like this was a really good practice in. No, you don't really always have to do that, even though it was low budget.
Yeah, I mean, well, kudos to Simpson, who also plays one of the characters in the film as well.
Yes, he's so
Um,
funny.
Yeah, it's quite, I think his running joke is probably one of the funniest things I've seen this year.
Yep.
Because I could only imagine not getting the lines right and then getting a chance to do it over again. So it's
Hmm.
good laughs will be had by all. But you've worked across many genres with an emphasis certainly on the nerdier side of pop culture. And I'm curious kind of how you've seen, fandom communities evolve because this, as you said, exists within the sci-fi genre, but it feels so much more relatable and I think accessible than most sci-fi films and the genre can be as a whole. So,
Yeah.
given you've seen this evolve, through a almost pre-internet era to the mostly internet era, how have you seen fandom and genre evolve from your own experience in your own work?
I mean, it's incredible how far it's come, how diverse it is now. I mean, it's how much more popular. It's no longer niche entertainment. It really is culture, which is awesome. I think, I mean, as a fan, there's nothing you can't get now, and there isn't any genre or thing that is too small to not be celebrated and find your community, which is wonderful. That's the thing about the internet. But again, like the entertainment out there that Hollywood is making for the genre is, I feel like it's kind of lacking lately.
Yeah.
Everything's very bloated, everything's very mechanized, everything's very calculated. And I think that people, that's why I've been on Supernatural and Buffy, and those are the kind of shows that still resonate more than, whatever 8 episodes every 3 years that is released on streaming, right?
Yep.
People want families, they want characters interacting, they want fun, they want to be included, and they want to feel like they belong as a community in the entertainment that they have. And I think that that kind of entertainment is kind of lacking right now, and this is the kind of movie that can fill that void.
No, I full stop agree. I think we need more niche and more kind of just, I won't even call it odd because it's not odd, but just things that really feel very authentic and genuine. And I think that's what
Yeah.
Tim Travers speaks from is this very much, this feels like an idea that, if I were a really, really smart, like kind of teenager, I would have come up with and then seen it through as my adult years, as I age, kind of refining this idea into something that it ends up becoming a Tim Travers, which is very sound physics, or at least I suppose they're sound. Someone much smarter than me will plug holes in it or not. But
It's
you know,
okay. It's a movie. At the end of the day, it's a movie. Just be like, uh-huh, 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 great. It's like when someone talks to me about hockey. I don't need to know the details. Let's just get through this.
I mean, yes, well, it did suspend my disbelief to the point where it said, whatever brain power is up here, it's definitely not thinking about plot holes at this point. It's thinking about, wow,
Yeah.
this is too much fun. Please don't let it end. And a
Oh,
more
yeah.
kind of fun question around like if you had access to a time machine, is there any particular place and time you'd like to go back to?
Well, listen, as a woman, time travel is not appealing, all right? I don't
Very
think
true.
there's, especially, I love ancient history, and me popping up in ancient Greece would get me killed in a second, you know?
Yeah, maybe
Um,
Egypt you're safe. Maybe if you end up in the royalty, but even
I don't
then,
know. Well, yeah, again, if you end up in royalty, it's always going to be good. The Ogliarchs always do well,
yes.
But as women, not so much because you get married off at like 12 or 11, and you're basically chattel. So, again, if I've determined that if I could be an invisible time traveler, I would love to go time travel. But if I have to go back and live in a different era, uh-uh. Right now is, it has some issues, but right now it's pretty good.
You know what? That's an interesting perspective, one that obviously as a, being a male, I can't really it doesn't immediately come to my mind. But yeah, there is a hard time for it is hard to go back as a female and try and expect some of the modern um progressions that we've experienced. So good to know that you probably would keep it local if given the chance. Um
I do
and
I do like ordering food and having it delivered to my house. I don't know if they had that back then.
yeah,
Anyhow.
and you wouldn't have to hold the bubonic plague either. It'd be great. You'd say,
True. I don't think they have vaccines for the kind of things like smallpox. Yeah, yeah, there'd be a lot of variety of stuff that I would inhale. There's a great book that I forget about. It's a time travel book. Ah, I'm blanking on it. It's such a good book about a group of time travelers that went to the back to the plague times. And just suffice to say, it's not great.
yeah, I can imagine that I'd be going back in a hazmat suit, just
Yeah.
just to make sure I'm warding off as much as possible.
And
But
then you'd be killed as a demon.
exactly, a heretic
Yeah.
that would just be
They'd be
strung
like,
up
what
and
is that plastic? This is obviously a devil.
yeah, I'd have to come up with some really good, 16th century or something like that English one-liners to get them off my back. But
Well, they
who
didn't even
knows?
speak the way, I mean, if you've seen Shakespeare, right? Yeah, so they
Yes,
didn't even speak the way that we do. So I don't know, man. It would be challenging to say the least.
I think I'm going to take you up in this invisible tourist angle.
I love it, right? Let's work on that. Let's work on the
Yeah,
invisibility potion and then we'll work on the time travel.
yeah, just put me somewhere where I can't be touched by, slings, arrows, and trebuchets. But
Yeah.
my last question for you, Felicia, is, if you were asked to program a double feature with Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox, what do you think would make a good film, either before or after it? It doesn't really matter ordering wise.
Oh my gosh, that's really hard. Oh boy. I mean, to me, Tim Travers is kind of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy vibe. So maybe that movie, I guess the Zooey Deschanel, but they did a mini series that I think was better. So I don't, yeah, or you could just go completely opposite and get a time travel movie, and be able to point out all the flaws. So like Back to the Future.
Yeah,
Like
take
then you're just like, oh boy, this is not good. Also, he's gonna date his mom. Like those
cracks
things.
knuckles.
Yeah, crack knuckle. Let's get in here.
Yeah,
Aha.
let's point out the flaws in the incest.
Yes.
Um,
Always
w
point out flaws in incest. Always do
Yes,
that.
always, always. Well, Felicia, I just want to say thank you once again for taking the time to chat with me about the film. We truly enjoyed it. Can't wait to write a review about it. And for those that
Oh,
are
great.
watching it, it'll be in theaters on May 30th, so you can catch it there. And I do suggest seeing this with other people in a crowded room because it's so much more fun to see a movie that way. But this one has so many laughs that I think are amplified by seeing it with others.
Oh yeah, the times that I've gone to screenings at film festivals, it has just been like gasping and hilarity. The F-bombs are copiously well received.
It's infectious laughter. And if you can't make it to a theater on the 30th for whatever reason, it's okay. You're saved on the June 24th, what's coming to digital VOD. So you'll have no excuse to check out Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox. But Felicia, thank you once again.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate the time and look forward to seeing in whatever projects you're working on next.
All right, great. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Love the movie. Had an absolute blast. In fact, when I talked with Felicia a couple days ago, I gotta admit, Stimson, I mispronounced your name. I said Simon, so I told her I would fall on my sword in front of you on this call. So I'm doing just that.
If it makes you feel better, the sheer number of ways I have heard my name mispronounced over my lifetime, Simon is relatively minor. The one that confuses me most is Vincent. Like, I
Hmm.
get that one a lot, and I'm always really perplexed how you get, like, Stimson to Simon, I get that. Stimson to Vincent, I'm always lost at how weirdly common that one is.
I'm gonna call you Stimson from now on.
Yeah, there we go.
Stimson,
Or
I'll take it.
Vincent. I mean, we could go either way with it. But Vincent's not a bad name to be mixed up with. But before I get too far into my own tangent, I just want to say welcome to you both. This is Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily. And I am super excited to be joined by Stimson Snead, who is the writer, director, co-star, executive producer of Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox. And I'm also joined by Tim Travers himself, Mr. Samuel Dunning, who plays the lead role. So thank you both, gentlemen, for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure, Matt. Great to be here.
Well, as I was telling you before, as we started recording, huge fan of the film, thought it was absolutely hilarious. Can't wait for folks to actually go see it on the 30th of May. But I want to ask you real quick, Stimson, can you share a little bit about your inspiration for the film and kind of the ideas around trying to make this almost, very authentic time travel movie?
I always like to have one foot into the world of science because I have been of the firm belief for a lot of years that the realities of the world, the stuff proposed by real science, is so much weirder than actual science fiction. Like there is more majesty and craziness in reality than there is in fiction. And time travel was not front and center on my mind at the time I came up with this film, but I had been reading up a little bit on it. I had talked to a few physicists, more just, the thought experiments on how that stuff works. And then when I came across a time travel movie that I was not a fan of, I decided that I wanted to do my own take on it. And when I say I decided, what I mean is I got blackout drunk and outlined what I think a good time travel story should be, one that asks the right scientific questions on a napkin.
As one does.
So, as one does, a pretty frequent step in my creative process. Uh, but that's really what it was all born out of. It was me wanting to explore specific ideas that actually are rooted in reality. At the beginning of both the feature and the short, Tim Travers is trying to figure out why the paradox is functioning. Because the whole point of the paradox is that it cannot function. So he comes up with several explanations, and every one of those explanations he brings up is a real theory in science for
Hmm.
how time travel would work. And that is the jumping off point that I wanted to use. And yeah, we get into this weird other stuff of self acceptance and character arc and good storytelling and comedy. But really, me just wanting to ask those questions was
Well,
the
yeah,
genesis.
that's your Trojan horse for your Trojan horse is the character development and arc, but everything else is right there in the middle. So, Samuel, you give what I would consider a whirlwind performance as Tim Travers, having multiple iterations of himself that you're playing. How do you prepare for a role like that, and more specifically, find ways to kind of delicately differentiate between the different versions of yourself that are on screen?
Um, it's a good question. I mean, first and foremost, you have to memorize basically the entire script.
Right.
But that is extremely daunting just on its face. So kind of the way I approached it, just because it was such a tremendous amount of work, is that I broke it down to like the literally the night before, just make sure you have what is on the docket for the next day, like down pat. And then, even more so, like as the day progresses, just break it down into scene at a time. And like, obviously I made sure I was really familiar with the whole script, so that I knew at any given point sort of, where each Tim was coming from. But even so, I mean, as far as actually differentiating between them, like thankfully a lot of that was just on the page due to Stimson's great screenwriting. So, I didn't have to do a whole lot of work there but nonetheless, still there were plenty of times where I was like, what's the difference between gamma and alpha right now? I can't remember. And so I would literally just yell out to Stimson, like, all right, is this the dumb one or the mean one? And and so between Stimson, myself, and our script supervisor, we all made maybe one cogent brain, and that got through every given day.
Well, bless your script
In some regard,
supervisor.
Yes.
he was bleeding from the eyes.
Mhm.
I have never seen a script supervisor work so hard and probably take several years off his life from stress. Although,
Well,
Sam, I would say you're cutting yourself short a little bit. Sam found such humanity in this wonderfully contemptible character. But no, Sam always did a really beautiful job finding the notes and the humor in this. And I always enjoyed the kind of back and forth he and I had on set because it was, in some regards, some of the least involved I've been directing wise.
hmm.
Like, just he and I would come over and chat a little bit. Occasionally, I would just give a note on a joke. But for the most part, he just found the way to carry this character through.
Thank
Well,
you.
yeah, I'd say you definitely were selling yourself a little short, Sam, because even in the looks and the thing of looks of the different versions of Travers out there, there is a there's a personality to them that goes beyond what's on the page. But again, Stimson, you wrote some amazingly entertaining characters. There's a scene in here that I will never get out of my brain. And I think it's one that I know folks will either I don't know. I can't imagine anyone hating it, but I can't imagine a lot of people loving it for the sheer audacity of it. And there's
I
probably
know
some
the
people that
scene
we
you're talking.
validated that are thinking, I would have done that, you know?
You were saying that no one could dislike that scene. There was a sales screening where there were people who stood up and walked out
Uh, well,
during
first of
that
all,
particular scene.
well, I don't know how those people walk through life because that is the least offensive thing I've seen in a long time, but it was one of the most hilarious. So, Stimson, thinking about your role in the film, you play the hitman of Helter. Do you find yourself a little bit more comfortable in front of the camera or behind the camera, or do you, either or for you?
Way more comfortable behind the camera. In this, usually I'm pretty comfortable in front of the camera myself as an actor. This was not one of those times. I had so much going on that I was keeping track of on set that I legitimately have not felt so underprepared as an actor in my entire life as doing the role in my own movie. Uh,
The
I
irony.
think I think every given scene that I am in, I was probably looking at the script to memorize lines for the first time within half an hour before rolling camera. There is this running joke of this note that he has to repeat over and over again. And I had to do some work in post, and well, the editor had to do some work in post because I kept screwing up that line every single time. I don't think I ever actually delivered the note line the same way twice.
Well, I
So
mean, that's kind of goes with the joke to some extent, and that you kind of are, belaboring this line you need to deliver, but every single time your opportunity is missed. And it's a great running joke that I found myself just kind of increasingly like getting more and more mileage out of the longer the film went on, because it does get to points where it's like you can almost empathize with Helter's to some extent. Like, yeah, I could see how maddening this could be. Although I'm not a stone cold killer, so what do I know? Uh,
I gotta say, I have great sympathy for the character of Helter. I mean, he's a terrible person like most people in this movie, but given what's happening to him, I have nothing but empathy for Helter.
I mean,
I
at
think
least
the
he wants
poor
to do
guy
the
is
job
losing his
right.
mind.
Like he
Yeah,
wants to say that line that he's supposed to say, which he could have easily gotten away knowing that he never said it and just said he did. So, I'm thinking about a little about this is a question for both of you. We'll start with you, Samuel. When you think about the process of filming the scenes, particularly where you're playing multiple versions of yourself, how do you, from a performance standpoint, how do you make sure that you are kind of how do you switch between those and at the same time know you're in the right place, doing the right things so that when you go to edit and everything, it's going to look more authentic. And again, same for you, Stimson. How do you direct something like that?
I mean, honestly, it's kind of what I already said when it just like between Stimson's brain, my brain, and our script supervisor's brain. That said, also a big portion of it was that I had a handful of stand-ins and body doubles. So Stimson will speak more to the actual technicality of all of it and directing it, because it was, there's a lot of, Hollywood trickery to make a lot of the effects work. But I got to give a shout out to my hero stand-in body double. David Babbitt, he basically learned the script backwards and forwards just like I did. And so at any point, if you actually feel like there's chemistry between me and me, that's because I'm acting opposite a real living person. And his face may not be there, but he was basically watching what I did, in the shot prior, and then giving me a semblance of that performance to act off of, so that I kind of, could match it up as well as possible. But I really could not have done a lot of the convincing work with myself without him.
on the technical side, the main strategy that myself and Brian Gosling, the DP, used was to blatantly ignore the fact that there's multiple of the same actor in a given
Mm.
shot. Our policy was to pretend it was a normal movie, set up the shot, stage the scene, and then do the figure out which trick we would use that time. Working with the wonderful Jason McKee on the effects side. So we had our effects coordinator who did all the post production right there on set. We tried to mix up the technique with every other shot. We tried very hard to make it where there's rarely two shots in a row where it's the same trick twice. So sometimes it's old fashioned split screen. Sometimes there's a look-alike double where there's not even an effect. It's just another actor who looks like Sam, framed slightly out of frame. Sometimes we're using a deep fake technique where we're altering somebody else's face. Sometimes we actually have a full-on digital model of Sam in which we'd put his head on a different actor, or we would insert him digitally into the background. But we would kind of figure that out as we would go. And again, in the setting up of a shot, we would ignore it. Every shot is a normal shot. We're filming it like a normal movie, with the only restriction that because of the effects, we have to be very shy about moving the camera.
Right.
This film is actually, for my first feature, it's actually one of the most calm films I've ever made in terms of where the camera is in every given scene. And that's very much because of the effects.
Well, I mean, it sounds like just the process alone would be enough to take over a wonderful special feature on a physical release. So, fingers crossed that you all get one and get the chance to elaborate a bit more on the process of making it. Because I think, again, it's very convincing, and especially considering, as an independent film, it's very hard, I think, to get away with high concepts under certain budget levels. But you all have pulled it off swimmingly. So. My last question for you is kind of a fun one, but I often been told it's very difficult. So I don't know, maybe I'll change it someday. But if you're asked to program a double feature, and one of the films is, of course, Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox, what film do you think would make a good complement with it? Whether it goes before or after, doesn't really matter.
Hmm. I would make it a triple bill. Start with Tim Travers, comedy, follow with Primer, non-comedy, and then complete it with Buckaroo Banzai. I think that
Okay.
would be the thematic arc of the evening.
It's a fascinating triple feature. What about you, Sam?
Mm, that's tough. I've gotten this question before, and I never feel like I have a good answer for it.
Comes to you late
Um,
at night when you're not thinking about it. That's why.
yeah, probably. Why don't we do like a few select this plus a few select episodes of Red Dwarf and call it a day.
Okay.
I knew that makes
Yes.
Stinson happy.
Wow, that is a callback that I feel like there's a small percentage of people watching this will know, and they're probably our age. So, but what love a good old BBC sci-fi series. So, well,
There's a lot
gentlemen,
of Red Dwarf's DNA in the humor of this film, actually. Probably more than any other bit of source material.
well, I mean, honestly, now I have another reason to go back and watch it to find those Red Dwarf Easter eggs. So all the better. But gentlemen, I want to thank you both again for taking some time to speak with me about the film. It's fantastic, and I hope folks go to see it when it hits theaters on May 30th. But in the case that you can't make it to the theater because for whatever reason you just don't make the time or you don't prioritize it like you should, you can catch it on VOD in June 24th. So you don't have no excuse to enter Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox. But thank you both so much. Looking forward to whatever working you work on next.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Of course.